I know we're all bracing for some weather. I am from Wisconsin. I'm not used to this. Haven't lived there in a while, but we're preparing for another week in the American Athletic Conference. Headed on the road for 2 in Texas. Had a good week last week that we want to build on in a number of different areas, and just trying to keep fighting for improvement here in February.
All right, guys, questions? Michael, you want to start?
Sure. Do you anticipate changing, like, how you're going to travel or anything like that because of the weather?
Yeah, we're looking at potential changes. In fact, we just got off a phone call and might leave late tonight. The National Weather Service has given us some information, so we're working with our team on all those types of things.
Would you let Jared know?
I just found out actually on that right now. We're trying to look at a couple different options, talking to bus companies and hotels and all that type of stuff with some of the stuff coming.
I mean, is that what is that what all the trips to Florida and whatever, I mean, is that what is supposed to prepare you for that later in the year? Just the kind of how do you prepare for unsettledness? How do you prepare for being unprepared?
You just know that it could come. I mean, I think about over the years a number of things. I remember one time several years ago, we finished practice, and this was at my previous school. Commercial flight was canceled for the next morning, and so we had to get on a bus and go on a very long trip. One time we were playing out west, and we made our first flight. We were connecting, and then we sat there for 8 hours, didn't even practice the day before. We won the game, and then the guys convinced me, Coach, I don't know if we need to practice. We played well. So I think we always take the standpoint of let's control what we can control. Let's make decisions the best we can for the health and safety of the players first, and then, of course, trying to prepare and get ready to play a good game.
How do you go about building on momentum? I mean, you've kind of, at least a couple different times, done a pretty good job of stopping what could have been, a spiral, and now you've put a couple wins back to back. How do you kind of try to build on that?
I think so much of this starts with how we approach every day, from the summertime to how we handle wins, how we handle losses, and trying to be very consistent in our approach. And I've said it many times that we win, we celebrate, we lose, we reflect, and be upset and disappointed. But that very next day, we want it to feel very similar. Sometimes the conversations are a little bit different, but the tone, the directive, the mission to feel very similar. So our mission is, how do we become the best version of us? Coming off wins, it can build confidence. Of course, we don't want to have any type of complacency or any of that type of stuff, but we hope to build confidence in some of the things that we did well. We defended at times better. I thought we shared the ball at times better. UTSA in this last game gave us some issues with their full court pressure in the second half. We've got to handle that better. But every game is different. North Texas is a different type of opponent, but we just want to keep moving forward and try to get better.
After having some days to evaluate it, what do you think that you did better that allowed you to close out the last 2 games that you had fallen short on in some of those close games earlier in the year?
I think the turnovers late in some of the games earlier, we had some very key turnovers in the last 4 minutes of the game. We were much better at that this last week. We were able to find some key baskets in different ways. We were able to make free throws in this last game. That hurt us in another game. So sometimes it's not just one thing, it's a combination of other things. But in this last game, UTSA wouldn't go away. I mean, they made those 2 threes late. And our guys, I thought, emotionally stayed locked in and moved on to the next play better than what we have in some other games.
Even before DeJuan Odom went for his ride in late in the game, he seemed at times to be, I guess he came out well before that, and he's just kind of, I don't know, he's he looked a little banged up maybe, or just kind of exhausted. I don't know maybe what the best way is. I mean, do you feel like he's kind of, I mean, I guess you had mentioned the post game that you were going to encourage him to get the rest up and then, you know, come back. Has he seemed kind of to have mended and kind of rebounded from the physicalness of that game in the last, you know, couple of days since you've seen him?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a part of our strategy now is how we manage practice, not just for him but for everybody. We've got a number of guys banged up, but I know that's part of college basketball right now at this point of the season. There's, in all of our practice planning, there's the frequency, the duration, and the intensity. Our duration of practice needs to be lower. I think I pushed the guys a little bit too hard leading into that FAU game at home at 11 o'clock, coming off that loss against Memphis and just the things that we were trying to get forward. We shortened things up even more this last week, and I think the guys responded well from that and just try to keep the main thing. We're asking Dwan to do a lot. He plays a lot of minutes. He's got the ball in his hands a lot. But we've got to continue to find ways of making practice more mental, getting enough physical, but making sure the bodies are as fresh as possible on game day.
North Texas has been on a pretty good run this year. What are they doing that's made them, you know, right near the top of the conference right now?
North Texas is the best defensive team in the metrics, and they do a really good job of making people miss. And it starts with that. Threes and twos. They run you off the three-point line, and they force you into a lot of mid-range twos, and they're very physical. They have a way of angling you to certain spots. Their offense has something to do with it, too. They make it feel it's a very slow game. They take their time on offense. They put you in a mental state of having such key awareness of this possession is so important, and they put you in some different spots where if they can play from in front, you're feeling the stress. And so we got to get off to a good start, and we've got to be able to then not let their offense dictate the whole game because they're so controlled with everything they do.
The Juwan Odom experience gives you quite a variety of some highs and some lows, but that's kind of what makes him effective, I guess, is his aggression a little bit with it. And so with that in mind, like, how do you coach that? I mean, do you try and reel it in a little bit at times? Do you let him just go play his game and know that you're going to have some turnovers, you're going to have some moments where there's kind of some frustration that comes with the good, or how do you go about navigating that?
Yeah, we always try to minimize mistakes, but we know that mistakes are a part of the game. There's not seen a perfect game yet. I've seen guys go perfect from the field at times, but when his hit rate is much higher than his miss with his aggressiveness, and he had some turnovers that I know he'd love to have back from the other night, and just handling some of the pressure and so forth. I thought he did get fatigued at times, and I tried to get him out early in the second half. Another time, he's a hard guy to bring off the floor for us. But we've got to minimize the turnover, especially the live ball turnovers, as much as possible. We were fortunate in this last game as a group. UTSA shot 2 more free throws and 14 more field goals than us, and we still win the game. We were able to be very efficient in the shots we took, but we've got to find a way to make that at least even or reverse it. But yeah, we spend time with DeJuan and showing the different spots, but he's a downhill driver, and he's aggressive. He gets fouled. When he plays on 2 feet, he's really, really good. They were certainly trying to, in UTSA, their pressure impacted all of us negatively a lot in the second half.
Coach, a lot like Charlotte, UNT, again, controls the tempo. They use a lot of the shot clock, and you've improved on the rebounding side, but how important is it they trigger a shot at 28, they get the rebound, and all of a sudden they're sucking the life out of the game a little bit?
No, that's what they do. I mean, they're a boa constrictor when it comes to the way they play. They just try to take the life out of you. They are very rigid in discipline in the things that they're trying to do. And what I mean by that is, you know, Atten Wright's going to take a lot of shots, and they have ways that they try to do that. They have ways of trying to get switches. They have ways of putting you in the post and reading which way you guard the post. So they have a real way of playing in its simplicity, but it's very complex in the things that you try to do to try to keep them off balance because they're really good at it. Then once the shot goes up, I think it really begins for them. They've always been really good at crashing the glass, keeping you on offense, or keeping themselves on offense, and then you having to guard that again. And then the way they defend you on the other end it's just very different. And you've got to have a great mental and physical resolve to play North Texas.
Speaking of sucking the life out of you, you win a game in Philadelphia, snap a 4-game losing streak. You come into the locker room afterward with your water bottle ready to spray it on everybody. The entire team is just moping in a half circle, not moving whatsoever, and you were wondering what on earth is going on. But they kind of fooled you, didn't they?
They definitely fooled me. That's right. No, they got me good. And I don't know, I still haven't found out who the leader was on that one, but they were really good. And but there was a celebration right after that. I was really proud of the guys for that one.
But when you came in, you threw the water bottle down and expect them all to jump up, and they just sat there for 4 or 5 seconds, and you're wondering what on earth.
Yeah, it felt like a long time. You know, we talk about chance favoring the aggressor, and I'd been tipped off that there was water bottles in hand by one of my coaches. They were scouting the situation, so I was like, I'm going to hit them first. And then they had a delay, and then it was like a waterfall. It was great. I'll take it anytime.
Back to Michael's question earlier about closing out games. Is there coaching that's involved in that? Early in the season, it was more like, I'm glad we had this experience, right? Wish it would have went a different direction when you don't win a game, you're up early and whatever. And we talk about it being a good experience down the road. Is it playing out that way? Is it coaching and practice that's allowing? Like, where would you say that kind of lies?
Yeah, I certainly don't seek out bad experiences, but we're going to use all experiences. And unfortunately, we fell on the other end earlier in the season and needed to learn how to win those games. In the last several closer games, we've been better, not perfect, but we do times of special situations, even in the summer sometimes, like certain just, hey, this is what we want to do in this situation or this situation, because we're pretty, we have some certain philosophies in certain situations that we want to get to the guys right away. But then there's so many things that just happen. It's a game of a lot of variance with how teams are guarding you, time and score. It's impossible to practice every situation. But I do think that there's a greater calm among our team. We've had so much variance in our roster. You look at who was playing at the end of the game in some games and who's doing it now. It's different. And so there's growth, and there's also different opportunities to play with a flexible lineup. But I just do think that there's a greater cohesiveness in the group of what to expect.
North Texas, you touched a little bit on this with Bruce, but from a defensive efficiency standpoint, they kind of a little bit are like Tulane, very efficient on the defensive end as well. How important is it for going into a game like this? You not only know how to play against a team like this from the situations they put you in, but then also practically applying it to that situation.
That's a challenge. In all game scouting, and we have a scout team, our coaches divide up the scouts and really dive into all the details, and then you figure out what is most applicable for the guys. Like, what is it that they need to know? The way North Texas plays is hard to simulate, but we're absolutely going to be able to press upon the guys like, hey, you got to expect to guard most of the clock. We've got to be able to hold them to one shot. And then when we go down on the other end, we want to be aggressive but not reckless, because then you're just going to – there is a time of possession in basketball too that has an impact on the game. But we've got to have a fluidity in our flow game. They're going to try to take us out of it, and we've got to do our very, very best to not have live ball turnovers, because there's going to be much fewer possessions in this game than most games that we play. And that's the real strategy that North Texas implies on teams is you're just not used to playing it this way, but we are.
You mind if I ask about your kid? Is that okay?
Yeah.
You were obviously at his game last week. I don't know how often you get to do that during season, but how much do you enjoy getting to do stuff like that? And is it hard taking the coach hat off and being dad for moments like that?
Yeah. I don't get to see it a lot. There's a balance between, you go watch your kids play, and then there's recruiting to do too, and sometimes those nights can overlap. But that happened to be a night that I was able to go watch, and was able to watch. Yesterday we didn't have practice, and my younger son played in some like travel ball type stuff, and so it's the most important job I have is to be husband and dad, and of course we integrate with our entire staff and our families a lot. I mean, what we do is a lot of who we are, and we try to create a great family environment here, not just for our players, but for our staff and their kids. But it's really fun to watch your kids do stuff they enjoy, and that could be basketball, it could be something else. We've given them every opportunity to find things that they're passionate about. But what was fun the other night, and I appreciate you putting them on the news too. That was fun.
Does he have more of your game or your wife's game?
That's a good question. My wife, we met in college. I was on the men's team, she was on the women's team, and she had a very good team, and she had a very defensive mentality and kind of the grittiness, and I was a little bit more of a catch and shoot guy. So I'd like to say that they're a combination of both of us.